Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Stately Office Hours. I'm back again. Did you miss me? Don't answer that. So every week, the team at Stately, that's us, does an office hours where we share what we've been working on and answer your questions. And if you've got a question for us, you can ask it right here in the YouTube live comments. You can tweet us at hashtag Stately Office Hours, or you can join our Discord, and I can show you the link for that at discord.gg/XState, and we've got a dedicated office channels in there, office hours channel, where you can ask your questions in there as well. Now, I'll be watching out for those questions throughout. In case you haven't met us before, we'll do a little bit of an intro to each of us. So I'll start off with me. I'm Laura Kalbag. I'm here advocating for developers and designers and trying to make XState easy to learn and to use. Let's see. How about you, David? Do you want to go next?
Hey, yeah, I'm David. I work at XState, or I work at XState. I work at Stately. I do a bit of everything. Right now our big goals are, just building out like tons of state software modeling stuff. I haven't had my coffee this morning, so I'm sorry. But anyway, I help organize this whole thing that we're doing. I don't know how to describe myself, really.
So, Matt, you go.
You're a founder, David. You founded all this.
Yeah,
I guess.
That guy. I am a developer, working mostly on the VS Code extension and a little bit in core and some other secret projects we've got going on.
And how about you, Anderist, Matthias?
I'm just a developer at Stately, in searching for a TS specification, but unfortunately there is none. So doing just lots of crazy stuff here.
Fantastic. And we have some little milestone this week that we wanted to mention, that this week we have passed 2,000 members on our Discord server. So thank you, everyone, for that. It's it's very exciting, and it's a really nice community there. If you're not a member of our Discord server yet, it's not a conventional tech community, I have to say. I've been part of many of them, and it's very welcoming, very friendly. We have a dedicated channel if you have beginner questions as well. So please don't be intimidated. Come and talk to us, and we all hang out there all the time. So if you ask a question, you will likely get an answer from one of these incredibly intelligent people here. And next up, Matt, would you be able to demo what you've been working on, or one of the many things you've been working on this week?
Yes. So we at Stately, what we do is we do these Monday research days, and the one I've been most excited about for a while is an interactive tutorial for XState. This is a little sort of local repo that I've got going on here, and I've set up a little test for us. We have a Monaco editor up here, and if I edit the Monaco editor, it's going to create a machine for me, and then it's going to subject that machine to some tests. So you can see that it's got a new test down there. It waits for 1,000 milliseconds or a second, and it says test number 1 failed. So check failed, expected hello to have been logged to the console. Okay, so we have a modeling problem here, guys. And I was thinking, David, how would you make a machine that waited for a second and then logged something to the console? What's the process?
Sorry.
Oh, damn. Get that coffee, dude. What's going on?
See, yeah. Well, all right, so let's see. Waiting for a second, that sounds like a delayed transition. And then logging something to the console, that sounds like an action. So, that's where I would start.
I guess we need a couple of states. We need an initial state. Let's call it initial for now. Let's imagine that we have states. We have our initial state. And then we have, let's say, logged first thing to console. Okay, so what we want to do in here is we want to say after 1,000, so 1,000 milliseconds, we want to target the logged first thing to console state. I'm not getting my usual TypeScript inference here. I need to work that in later. So, but it's not yet logging anything to the console. So how would you choose to log something to the console, David?
Well, you could do it on the entry to the state. Just add an entry action over there. Looks like Eric has solved it in the chat as well.
As he states. Oh yeah, I'm just going to copy paste that.
Yeah,
that's helpful.
Thank you, sir. Perfect. And stick that in. We've got waiting is the initial state. And then log. I'm losing something there. Eric, you might have a syntax error here, buddy. Let's see, an unknown error occurred. Keep deleting things. Eric, you led me down the garden path and you didn't show me the way. So I'm going to say, just keep it simple here. We're going to say console log and hello, like this. Waiting for 100 milliseconds. We logged hello to the console, but now there's a new test. We need to wait another 2000 milliseconds and then expect hello again to have been logged to the console. So the idea is we would somehow go through and solve all these puzzles. And when we get to the end, then we go on to the next test and we can use our machine and subject it to new tests. So this is the theory. I really like this kind of like terminal-based output here. On the left here, we would have, if I go to an actual one that I've written, which is one based on a sign, we can see here that, okay, we're sending an event of type increment to the machine, expected state.context.count to equal 1, instead received -1. So it starts on 0 and it should be going up, but it isn't. So we change that, and now it says all tests passed. You can go to the next lesson. So decrement, so this is where we would create a decrement event. Decrement, and then that should be -1, and now we're passing. So this is the general idea, is that you would be able to use interactive tutorials to not only learn the basics of XState, but also give you a framework for learning the more complex modeling challenges that come with XState. So you would say, okay, we need a machine that matches these requirements. Let's say that calls a fetch function or something, goes and grabs some data off the internet. We can mock that locally with this setup. So give you like a global sort of fetch data function that you can call. And then we just test it. And it allows you to solve these puzzles any way that you like, potentially share the solutions. And we're thinking that this might be a nice answer to the question that we're asking this week, which is, which Laura will probably intro in a second. But yeah, I'm keen to think, Laura, especially your thoughts on this, really, because you're someone who's relatively new to XState and you're kind of revolutionizing the documentation in favor of people who are new to XState. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I am really keen on this because I think that a lot of us learn a lot better by doing. And that's exactly what we're doing in these interactive tutorials, is that we're learning as we go. And I think one of the best examples a lot of people give is the Svelte documentation, which has a really fantastic tutorial that takes you right from the basics. And I appreciate that one in particular because they start you off learning about accessibility as well. If you're not familiar with making sure that you add an alt attribute to your image. So not necessarily Svelte related, but setting you up with best practices in all kinds of ways. So if we could end up with tutorials that have that level of like care and depth, but also with the fantastic features that you're building into it, which I mean, it's another level. And then when you look at what Farzad's been doing with the embed mode and how we can translate that over to the interactive tutorials so that you can build everything and visualize it instantly. Oh, it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's huge. Like the Svelte tutorials I literally just copied the spacing and everything from there. Like it's just a perfect example. And the thing about those is that they have a real visual component too. It's like you write something in there and you see it visually appear. And there's almost no feedback. Well, the feedback loop is incredibly fast. And that's exactly what I'm thinking for this, is that you do want a sense of, okay, I want to test them against some actual test cases, which is what the terminal output does. But imagine just having a little tab that you could see, okay, let me see my visualized output as well. Let's see if what I'm building sort of looks right. There's so much exciting stuff there. David, what are your thoughts?
So yeah, I echo everything that Laura said. I think that this is going to be a really great way to learn by doing. And also, I really like the concept of this just testing that you're reaching that end goal of like whatever the kata or tests are trying to test. Because like with a lot of coding tutorials, it's like, all right, you have to make sure you have like exactly this code structure. But with state machines and state charts, it's a little bit different. It's like, no, there are many ways to model it, and some are better than the others. Just like playing chess. I saw the rook endgame thing on there, but there's many ways to like get to an end goal, and that's the same for modeling. So it's going to allow people to learn in a way where they can be creative and be like, you know what, I can name this whatever I want. I could nest the states however I want, as long as I reach the goals in each of the exercises. So I think that's really valuable.
So powerful. And it really does tie in with our weekly question. We're going to try and start asking a question a week. It's partly a way of us just finding out more about everyone who's using XState, but also a way for us to get good feedback. So the question that I was asking was, what's the one thing you wish you knew when you were getting started with XState? Because this is one of the things that we're trying to fill the gaps in the documentation. We're trying to make it easier to get started, to get going. One of the most common pieces of feedback we get is that the learning curve is steep, and we know it is. And so we're trying to address that. And so how about we start off with the team here and ask, what did you wish that you knew when you were getting started with XState? Let's start with Matthias Anderist, as you've been quiet so far.
Probably that would be like how to create more than a single machine that communicate with each other, and how to basically organize this kind of code, but also like how to work with it in combination with a view framework like React or any other. So yeah, what are preferred ways of accessing stuff like children or like child actors and stuff like that? Yeah, I think that would be it.
That's a super common one too, and it's like there's so much in there, like in terms of architecture as well, like how parents and children communicate with each other, how different siblings can communicate with each other too. It's there's so much to go on there.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? What did you wish you knew?
I think I wish I knew about thinking of the root level of the machine as like its own state. Like when a machine is created, you don't need to go, it doesn't actually need any substates. If you think about it, all it needs is its own sort of root state. And from there, you can do really clever things on the roots. If you want to, for the entire duration of your machine, like check like an event listener, for instance, like if you want to check that the tab is in focus, you can just put that on the root state. So the root is a state, as Eric is saying in the chat. You can do entry actions on the root. You can do exit actions on the root. Like everything is possible, even on that root state. And if you think about that, then you can think about XState as even almost more powerful than just a state machine library, or more flexible than just a state machine library, because it's almost when you don't have finite states to contend with, it's just like a reducer, but a reducer which is really powerful, a reducer where you can have side effects that jump right from your events, where you can invoke services that are right there too. So yeah, thinking of the root as just another state is the one thing I wish I knew.
And I'm going to ask David the same question as well. Bit trickier for him, but actually, maybe we could make it more like, what do you wish you'd thought of or included when you started using XState?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that when making XState, it wasn't like I did everything from scratch. Everything was based on, just the existing ideas of state machines, state charts. What I wish I knew when, I guess, starting off XState was two things, actually. First of all, TypeScript. I think it was JavaScript first, as many 5+ year old JavaScript projects are, and the newer ones aren't, which they're lucky that they could start with TypeScript. But yeah, that might have cleaned up a lot of our TypeScript problems from the get-go. And the second thing was, like, I actually wish I knew about the actor model earlier. I learned about the actor model a couple years after working on XState and state machines, and so I originally had this idea of like, oh, okay, well, everything fits into this one big state chart, and everything is an event that goes into this huge monolithic state chart. But reality is a little bit different than that, where you could have many state charts talking to each other. And so instead of thinking about like, oh, how do I do this in an ad hoc way with like just gluing together different pieces of the code to make things talk to each other, there is a formalism, which is the actor model. And so actor model came a lot after the core functionality of XState. But we're working on making it more and more of a first-class citizen, especially in version 5. So a lot of people have been asking about, like, I wish I knew all of these powerful techniques that you could use for spawning and invoking machines and having them talk to each other. And so that's actually also something that I wish I knew earlier.
Yeah. And so we asked this question on our Discord at the beginning of the week, and we got some interesting, slightly long answers. So I'm going to try to cut them down as much as I can into something that's understandable. So one of the answers we got from Steve, either Steve O or Steve OH, aside from wishing that he'd known that David's last name wasn't Piano, he said what confused him at times was the sort of evolutionary state of the documentation, particularly where it was not clear which things were considered to be current best practice and which were there for compatibility. And I think after going through documentation yesterday quite a bit with Mateusz, I think we would agree with that actually one of the advantages of using XState is there's a lot of different ways, as Matt was saying, to do the same thing. You can get creative, you can do what works for your use case, but it can sometimes be tricky to know, is there a right way? Is there a best practice way as well? So I think that's an interesting response. What do you all think of that?
Yeah, I think evolutionary is the best way to describe it, because for the longest time I was the only one writing docs, and whenever a new feature came in, I'm like, okay, I have to shove this in somewhere. And I think that's the nature of like just how documentation evolves over time, which is why we need to just go through it, clean it up, organize it, and make it so it's less like you're trying to navigate through a maze to find something, and more just like directly, I need to do this. How do I do this? Oh, there's the answer right there. And so Laura's leading the efforts on that. So
yeah, and that is not to say that there's a lot of really great documentation there. It's just there's so much, because there's so much to document that it can be quite hard to navigate, and especially if you're new. And so let me go down to find the.
I had one more thought on that as well, if that's all right.
Oh, go for it, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, like as well, we've been on sort of version 4 for quite a long time, and slowly iterating on improving it, and some things have come to more prominence, and become more important as like an XState user, and some things have become less important, like especially when it comes to like TypeScript and trying to fight with it basically. And version 5 is kind of what we hope is going to be our kind of the result of all of this research, and so the docs are in a sort of half. Like we're going to be able to cut so much from the docs when we go to V5, because we're going to have like really strong battle-tested recommended uses for a lot of things.
Yeah, that's exciting. Enteleform, I think is how you say this username, said on the Discord, I think a changelog for the docs would be super useful. Once you've read through, it's kind of hard to keep up to date by sifting through randomly. And we completely agree with that. And that is actually one of the things that I've started implementing this week. It's not live yet, but it should be as soon as I guess we've got something to update you on. It will be live in there, and you'll be able to track those updates. I think we're going to try to get RSS going on for that too. So if you want to just subscribe, then you can do that as well. Jamie Mason says lots of small examples like next.js do, I guess, in their documentation would be handy. The catalog is great. We love the catalog here. Lots of great stuff in there. But features machines on their own. And so Jamie thinks that it would be better to have examples that are in React, Vue, Svelte, CLI, server, stateful styles, integrating with existing Redux for some reason, logging transitions to analytics, etc. All kinds of reasonably sized examples where the machine is not the whole story. And I think that's interesting because, of course, you're not using XState as a standalone. What do the rest of you think of that?
Yeah, so we actually started that effort in the repo, in the examples directory, and I have a bunch more examples coming soon, especially from some of the 7 GUIs work that we showed on the Keyframers live stream, and a bunch of other small examples that have popped up in the Discord. But getting those in the documentation, that's going to be something that's going to be really helpful. Also, hopefully you could hear us. Someone said, or Eric said the sound went away. Okay, so the sound's back. Hopefully everyone could hear us.
Eric
I think it might have been Eric.
Screwing with us today, man.
Oh, yeah.
Pasting broken code in the chat, saying we can't hear us. My God.
It's a real roller coaster.
Yeah.
So earlier, Matt tweeted the question out, what do you wish you knew when you started learning XState? And we actually had some great replies in there from Eric, among others as well. So Eric is really in with us today. Eric said, I did not understand the power of the use actor and use inspect hooks with passing actor refs as props in React. David, you responded, use interpret.
Yeah, so yeah, so we have a few, I guess, fundamental hooks in React. But yeah, so basically, instead of just having a machine just as a reducer, you have it as an actor. So this little entity that could send and receive messages. And so you could represent a lot of things as one of those tiny little entities. You could think about it as a little person walking around your entire code base, or, you know, your components and stuff. And you could pass that around as a reference to many things and send messages to it and receive messages from it. And yeah, that becomes really powerful. And you don't necessarily need to have those using state machine behaviors. You could use a reducer, promise, observable, whatever. So yeah, it is powerful. And we do need to make more examples of it and make it more prominent, especially because those are newer hooks. And the older ones just have more focus in the docs right now.
And Gavin, I think, followed something that a lot of us have said so far, is use cases for parent-child machines, actor model, and state machines. I think having those use cases help people understand when might suit to do child machines and things like that. Yeah,
I think I've seen two camps of this. There's developers who are like, I'm using XState for its state machine stuff. I don't think I see a need for those parent-child, you know, just invoking actors, etc. And then there's developers who are like, I really wish I used that because it would make, you know, this code that I have a lot less complicated. So yeah, just increasing the education on those.
Yeah, and in fact, Smooty said very similarly, I just started, but I'd like some more information about parent-child machines or spawning machines.
Mm-hmm.
Toby Obeck.
Sorry, I've got one more comment there, which is...
You go for it, Matt.
It would be great as well if we had interactive tutorials that sort of prompted you to use that as a solution, because there are specific reasons why you should use them and use cases that they're really useful for. For instance, when you need to spawn like n number of machines, there's no way to do n number of things in just pure XState. So you need to spawn like n number of machines, like let's say items in a list, for instance. You can't finitely represent the number of items in your list. You know, they have an infinite value, which is the number of them. So if you need to do different things to them, send different events to each of them, then yeah, that's a really good use case. But yeah, interactive tutorials where essentially spawning is the only answer for pure XState, then that I think would be really useful. Yeah,
so stricter, I guess, than the more creative ones.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, maybe we could have different ways to do the same thing, and we could actually push people in that particular direction so they can familiarize themselves with the alternatives as well. So, like the opposite of being creative.
Exactly. Yeah. Restrictive, being highly prescriptive, and there's only one way to do things. Yeah, that's the XState way.
Some people like it. Some people like it.
Yeah.
And so Toby Ovick said, I wish I knew about multiple syntax variants to accomplish the same thing. Having a shorthand and regular way to do things was kind of confusing at first.
Yeah, so we started cleaning that up in the documentation. I think a couple months ago, someone contributed it to the docs. Yeah, there are many ways of doing the same thing, sort of. So for example, actions, you could define it as a string, as an object, as an inline function. And if you have many, you could just put that all in an array, and all of that is valid. And so the reason for doing that, it's sort of a balance, and not everyone's going to be happy with the API, but it makes things simpler for the simple use cases where it's like, oh, okay, I just want one action, just put it in there. But like if you have multiple actions, and it's like, okay, well, I'll just change it to an array. But I could see like how having those as multiple options can be confusing. But the alternative is saying, okay, everything must be in an object and everything must be in an array as well. Then you get a lot of syntax noise, and it makes it harder to do things like quickly prototype with XState. And the more you write machines, the more I feel, at least in my opinion, you appreciate just the terse alternatives rather than having to write all that syntax noise. But yeah, I think we're refactoring the docs so that it is one consistent style. Yeah.
One thing that's on our minds too is it feels like we're getting to the thin end of the wedge in terms of when you have to edit your machines as JSON, and when you need to use this JSON object. We're getting close to visually editing machines. Like it's really like, it's a finite number of PRs away from being ready. So yeah, for us, that feels like the real revolution. We've got half an hour of that in our future too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Eric said that he did not know that a service could be invoked at root level that would last for the lifetime of a machine.
Yeah, so that goes back to that the root is the state. And so another clarification. So I think this is something that I wish everyone knew about XState, and it's probably my fault for not having it in the documentation earlier, but finite states are behaviors. So if your app only behaves in one way, that's one state. And so you could represent that as that default root state that you have, and then you could put things on the roots, and yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Chris Shank, who's very, very active in our Discord, and you should really give him a follow on Twitter because he's doing really good stuff on Twitter too. What's his handle? Chris Shank? I'll just look it up. Oh, someone can look it up, maybe not me.
Shank 23, I got it.
Yeah, Chris Shank 23 is his handle. I've seen him say that you should think of finite states as kind of like modes or categories, basically boxes that you put behavior in. When you're in one box, then nice. When you're in one box, you should do one set of things, and when you're in another box, then you should do another set of things. And when you think of them like that, it's very a lot simpler to categorize the behavior. We're in one mode, then we go to another mode, and you can have modes within modes. So it's pretty sweet. Eric's just asked a question that I'd love to answer directly, if that's okay. Which is, you can't put on in the root, though, right? Check TypeScript, Eric. You certainly can, and it's very, very useful. And it's used several places in the catalog. This is where you want to accept an event anywhere in the machine. Let's say you have, I was talking about like the tab focus machine, for instance, like when you have an invoked service that's checking whether the tab is focused or not, then you can have events that are responded to by the entire state machine, not by a single state within it. Yeah,
whoa is a good response.
Keanu Reeves, whoa gif right there. Whoa.
And actually, I have a draft article or post coming out on how you could use XState in a really simple way, creating a temperature converter from the 7 GUIs. So just have to clean that up and post it. And yeah.
Cool. We had Eric again, lots of tweets this morning. I did not understand the power/utility of spawning other machines and keeping their refs in context.
Yeah, so that goes back to, just emphasizing the actor model. So we should add more documentation and make that more prominent, because right now it's like 90% of the documentation is learning about state machines and state charts, and then there's like that little tidbit on the actor model. And again, that's evolutionary. Actor model didn't exist when XState was first released, and even XState version 3, XState version 4.
Is that David's sound or is that mine?
Yeah, David has turned into a robot for me as
He's
well.
turned to a robot and
He's
disappeared.
finally become the machine.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I think you're back, possibly.
Yeah. Do you want to just repeat what you were saying there, David? We can get you back.
Yeah, so I was saying that.
Oh, no. Okay.
Oh, no.
Sorry, David. We're going to have to put you on pause for a second. Hopefully it's not bad weather in your area. I think the last one answer that we had on the tweets at the moment was from Sammy, who said how to convince other teammates to use XState. And I'm actually thinking that might make a good question for next week, because I'd be really interested to hear how people convince their teams to use it. Because, I mean, obviously David hasn't had much difficulty convincing the team here.
That's true. He convinced us even before we were a team, so not too bad. Mateusz, have you got any thoughts on this? Have you ever had to do any convincing or advocacy for XState in like your work?
I had that was I have convinced the team, but like we just never did anything meaningful beyond experimentation, because features. so it was just kind of like never a good time for a refactor, and like I guess at the very end I was close to actually introducing XState, but I had to do some like other refactors to enable that, so just got stuck on it a little bit, but the idea was promising, and like to other people, and our designer was very fond of that. I think we have started to communicate a little bit, to document stuff with diagrams, which was not the case before that, and even like CPO in the company was looking at some kind of this documentation as for like it was very abstract in a sense, like this wasn't for the implementation, so not like the code level, but we have started to document more business oriented process that was just spanning the whole thing, the whole service. And it was very useful to just look through all the paths and even like discuss that, because and yeah, that just helped us a lot in making some business oriented decisions at the end. So I think like the potential was there, and some people were sold on that. Just kind of didn't have a chance to pull the trigger just yet. So.
It sounds like you've got people thinking about the approach of state charts sort of more than specifically using XState as the weapon of choice. Yeah. I think that's going to be really interesting, especially when we build tools that help you build this stuff visually. Like, because at the moment, thinking in state charts is really it's either restricted to people that use XState and kind of can code these state machines and see the visualizations, or it's restricted to people that know about state charts and just have a pen and paper, or can build things in Excalibur and can build these kind of ephemeral state charts. Whereas the state charts we build in XState, of course, are they're long lasting. They evolve with the product. So having the sort of mix of the two, where someone can contribute something with the ease of pen and paper, but have it live for the duration of the product and evolve with it and be used as an organizational tool as well as a coding tool, even as an organizational tool instead of a coding tool. You don't have to use XState to have state charts be a prevalent thing in your organization. So yeah, Natalie Cuthbert, what she's saying is use Inception. Basically, that's it. Go from the product managers first, build it through your organization, start thinking about state charts as a way to document and manage these processes. And then having XState be the thing that you use to execute those state charts is the obvious choice. David, are you back? What do you think of that?
Let me see. Do I sound like a robot still?
No. You're good.
no more than usual. Yeah.
Finally, I've transitioned from my robot states. Yeah, and that's something we're going to emphasize a lot in the future, where we don't just want to make XState specific tools. I don't think that that's our ultimate 5-year goal. More, we want to just create tooling that allows anyone to express their wildest ideas and flows and logic in a visual way, and to use that directly in your code, whether it's by using XState or by using any other tools. So there was an earlier comment that when do state charts take over the world? Yeah, here we go. How much time is left until state world? And yeah, so we're trying to make that question less rhetorical. I mean, not state charts specifically, but just the idea of visual modeling and making things easier for others to understand. So yeah, again, it's not about how do we get people to use XState? It's more about how do we get people to think in a visual, formal way that everyone can understand.
I think as well, a lot of people are moving to this sort of visual formatting as obviously the visual as a tool for planning has been a tool for as long as we have had plans, but the fact that state charts provide a formal engine where you can actually process that visual stuff into code is a whole new paradigm. So it's state charts, really visual state chart. I mean, you guys know, everyone knows.
Yeah.
Everyone here knows.
It makes you able that you can iterate on what you're building, and these things become so much less ephemeral because, having done a lot of work as a designer, it's quite frustrating when you're producing artifacts that are out of date next week. And this is a situation where you're not going to have that.
Absolutely. Everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet and the hymn sheet evolves.
Yeah. Spencer asked, is anyone writing about the different modeling patterns? Would be interested to learn about various approaches.
So I think two things are going to help with that. First of all are the interactive tutorials. That's going to at least help you think about just the different possibilities of how you could model, your states and transitions and all that. And so that's going to go along with the blog that we're making as well. And that we could be a little bit more freeform than the documentation, where we could just have specific blog posts on here's how I modeled this example, and here's a different approach for another example, and here's a cool trick that you could use, such as a machine sending events to itself. I'm also working on a long-term thing, which if you've read the Constructing the User Interface with State Charts book, which was written all the way back in 1999, I'm slowly working on an updated version of that, slowly because obviously, this takes priority. But hopefully that's going to give everyone a better idea of how they could, model states for any type of logic, in a visual way. Because again, modeling is the harder problem. Learning the syntax and everything, sure, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but after you get past that, then you get into this open field of okay, now how do I put everything together? And that's the biggest question that needs to be answered. So yes, yeah, we are working on this slowly.
Natalie asks, what's the theoretical difference between parallel state machines and actors? Kind of related.
Yeah, so we actually talked about this in the Discord. So you could think of it as the difference between sync and async, but I like to more think about it as the difference between with parallel states. And I think that's what's meant over here. So parallel states, it's like that behavior is parts of that same machine. And with actors, it's more like you're delegating that behavior to something else. So that becomes a little less deterministic, a little less predictable. It's sort of like asking someone to do something for you. You're not sure if they're going to do it. You have no control over that. They could just tell you, hey, I did it, or hey, I messed up, and sorry about your car, or whatever task you're giving them. So I guess it's a delegation thing. Like, is this behavior something that you want to control in a single machine, or is this behavior that you're okay with delegating and accepting that it's going to be less deterministic? So that's sort of the theoretical difference there.
And the idea too is they can run on different execution environments as well. So one can be in one execution environment and one could be another. And I like that because it means that humans, I suppose, are different execution environments. Like your kidneys can delegate to each other, but I can't delegate to your kidneys.
That's a good example. And so I think we're definitely seeing themes in the things that we need to cover, in like particularly prioritize in the documentation and things that we need to put in. So thank you everyone who's answered that question this week. That's been incredibly helpful. And yeah, we will get to, if next week we ask people about how they convince their teammates, maybe we'll produce a lot of really great content that will help you convince all of your teammates as well.
Perfect.
So if anyone has any more questions, you know where to ask them in the comments here or on our office hours in the Discord. Oh, there we go. Natalie's follow-up. So how would the actors fit into the visual tools?
Yeah, so like previously mentioned, we have state machines and state charts, which are deterministic and they're structured. And then you have actors, which they're sort of more like, in terms of visual tools, it's sort of more like a network pattern. You have this actor that knows about this one, that knows about this one, and then you either have a tree, or since actors can send references to each other in the same way that I could, share, names and emails and Twitter handles with anyone else, actors can know about each other at any point in the tree too. So it sort of becomes like this, again, a network diagram. Like if you've ever seen those, Facebook things where it's like, hey, this friend knows this friend, but you have a mutual friend with this friend and it's like all connected. I think that's one way that we could represent actors. And none of this is new. There's a lot of tools for visualizing microservices and how they talk to each other. And so by generalizing that into actors, we could do that at any level of the stack. So I think that's part of our future plans too, is just visualizing actors talking to each other and their relationship with one another.
Yeah, Nasty says actors generally follow a particular template. A prefabricated approach could be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of how Unity does it. Yeah.
And by the way, Natalie is the creator of Enact, which is an awesome library. If you go to enact.io, check it out. It's one of the actor model implementations in JavaScript. So, and I think Reason as well. So really good stuff.
Yeah, we have actor model royalty in our midst for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So if people don't have any other questions, we did have one more thing that we wanted to tell you about this week. And that is that from the end of this month, we will be doing live demos, sort of a special office hours with live demos focus the last Friday of every month. So dedicated demo day.
Mm-hmm. And if you are interested in presenting at it, then please let us know either in the office hours or I guess anywhere in Discord. Let us know and we'd be happy to showcase what you want to show off.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Now, does anyone else have anything that they wanted to share this week before we wrap up? No?
I was going to say just a quick teaser. We're hoping to get and I'm not going to publicly announce this unless you consider office hours public. But we're hoping to
Yeah.
have a closed beta of the editor by the end of the month. Just knowing that there's still a lot of things to be added and bugs and improvements that we're going to make. But yeah, if you're interested, again, let us know. And yeah, we'd love to show you what we've been working on so far. But again, this is going to be a closed beta at least until the beginning of next year, in which we just open this up to everyone. So you're here.
And have you been telling folks to sign up to the email newsletter on stately.ai so that they can hear about that?
Oh, yeah. So let me just do that real quick. There we go. Stately.ai. If you want to be one of the first to hear about it, then go to stately.ai and just look for those emails. We send very infrequent emails. So basically only whenever something benefits you and it is something like a tool release or something like that.
Big significant events.
Exactly. We're not going to give you a weekly newsletter of like, here's stuff that you're just going to move to your trash in the inbox. Like we don't want to do that. But we might be giving some screenshot teasers and things like that in the newsletter. So definitely sign up if you haven't done so already. And
of course, if you're in the Discord, you will also find out first. Yes. We can't do anything without telling everyone in the Discord.
Exactly.
And of course, if you're interested in beta testing, like prominent, like people who contribute in the Discord, people who visit office hours, these are the people that we're going to be looking to get really valuable feedback and proper valued members of our community, because we love you guys and we want to give you free stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, great. Then it was lovely to be back. It was lovely to do another office hours with all of you, and we will catch you again, same time again next week. See you later.
See you, everyone.
Ooh.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.